im se svima, i malima i velikima, i bogatima i siromašnima, i slobodnjacima i robovima, dade žig na njihovu desnu ruku ili na čela njihova, te da nitko ne može ništa kupiti ili prodati, osim onoga ko ima žig ili ime zvijeri ili broj imena njezina.
Pozdrav dragi narode, dobrodošli u još jednu epizodu Slobodni. Danas mi je izuzetna čast predstaviti rad jednog sjajnog gosta, gospodina iz Sjedinjenih Država, koji je inače i poznat bio puno prije nego što se naravno imao prilike susresti sa mnom oko današnje teme, a on je režiser, on je glumac, fotograf, bivši model i vrlo poznata osoba u Sjedinjenim Državama i zato mi je izuzetna čast danas predstaviti ga vama, posebice njegov rad i njegov najnoviji dokumentarni film. Njegov ime je gospodin Mikki Willis. Hello, Mr. Willis. Welcome to our show in Croatia.
Thank you for having me.
Can you say a few words about your background, please?
Well, I've been a filmmaker for over 30 years. I was a part of Hollywood for a long time, pursuing a very typical Hollywood career. And then it just turns out that I happened to be in New York City in 2001, September 11th, when the World Trade Center was attacked. And I spent 3 days doing search and rescue and body recovery. And it was a wake up for me personally. And after that moment, I call it a snap to grid moment, where suddenly everything came into focus in my life. And the things that I thought were important were no longer important. The things that I thought were meaningless suddenly mattered again, like family and connections and community and everything that goes along with leading a healthy, happy life. And so I couldn't really survive in Hollywood anymore with that new attitude. And so I left Hollywood and spent a couple of years reinventing myself and trying to figure out how in the heck I could force a square peg into a round hole of Hollywood, which was impossible. So I decided to create something called Elevate Film Festival, which was a kind of a global calling to filmmakers around the world to start creating work that mattered. And so we'd give filmmakers a challenge in 7 to 11 days to complete a movie. And then we'd fly them all into the United States and show their short films back to back, just to really do what we're supposed to be doing with media and the incredible power of filmed entertainment, which is showing the good side of humanity. Definitely there's a reason to show the problems, but problems without solutions are just problems. And so after this experience, that film festival went on tour for 3.5 years and became the largest single screen film festival in the world. And but then I was called, even though our audiences were growing, doubling each time. The show that we were going to do next was 12,000 people at the Hollywood Bowl, and I had an awakening that really brought things even into clearer focus for me. And that was 12,000 people doesn't really scratch the surface or move the needle of what needs to happen on this planet. And so we closed the film festival and started making movies, documentaries to tell the truth, to undo a lot of the corruption that has been happening in America and beyond, all over the world, to really spotlight that and to really ultimately, become a force against the mainstream media, which has done so much damage to our lives.
Well, I saw lots of your tremendous work, and that was my motivation to present this to our audience in Croatia and all around the Balkans who is looking at this show. I prepared for start one clip what is just preparation for your newest documentary, Follow the Science. And then we go to this documentary and all other your work.
Okay.
I'd just like to thank you very much for volunteering for this trial.
Vaccine injuries are rare and mild until one happens to you or your loved one.
You cannot walk away from this film and still be questioning that this is true.
There's information that I didn't even know about, and I've been part of this movement for the last 4 years. It's incredible.
Follow the Silenced is really our way of giving the people a voice who were completely silenced for having dared share the fact that they were injured by the COVID vaccines.
My son, my beautiful boy, heard me say to my husband, just let me die. I just need to die.
We really worked diligently to create a film for everyone, no matter where you are in your belief system with this subject.
It's a story of the human spirit. It's that
we can really love each other and reach across the aisle and find community. So it feels really amazing to be able to give them a voice, let their stories be heard.
It's moving, it's hard, it's intense, it's informational, and it's inspirational.
The film was so eye-opening to me.
The pandemic of the unvaccinated was, in fact, a pandemic of vaccine injuries.
Well, this is the last documentary, Follow the Silenced. What is this film about?
Well, shortly after we released Plandemic 2, which was in 2020, I started to receive a lot of phone calls from people around the world that had been first in line to receive the COVID vaccine trials. And I was getting phone calls and emails from wives and fathers and husbands and family members asking for help because I was aligned and connected with a lot of the top doctors who knew the truth about COVID. And what everyone was saying was that their loved ones or themselves had been very harmed by the trials. And so we looked into and found out that these otherwise perfectly healthy people who did what they were told to do, which is to follow the science, and rushed in to be the first in line, only to suddenly have, heart attacks and strokes and seizures. And that's the danger of treating medicine as a one-size-fits-all thing. It's not. Every human body is different. We all have our own different comorbidities. We all have our own different allergies. And there's a lot of reason that every body should be treated and medicine should be specialized and customized. And in a mass rollout like this, that doesn't happen, particularly within the time span that this took place. And so a lot of us knew what was going to happen, and indeed it did happen. So basically, I was receiving calls from people saying, listen, I wish I would have listened to you in your movie. I was told it was conspiracy theory, but I didn't listen, or my wife didn't listen, or whatever. And now they're really in bad shape. And is there anything that you can do to help? And so after receiving enough of these phone calls, I decided that we needed to make a movie about this and follow these people's story, because one thing that, it's one thing to be harmed by medicine that's supposed to help you. And then it's another thing that when that happens, and then you go out in the world to let other people know, be careful, because I trusted the science and now I'm in a wheelchair. And then all of social media calls you crazy and shuts down all of your social media so you can't speak in the world. That's when things became really serious for me. And I thought, well, this is horrible. I can't imagine, that this is happening, particularly here in America, which we call the land of the free and the home of the brave. Where was the freedom and where was the bravery in that moment? And so we got a hold of all the people that have been damaged, and we started following them around. This is 4.5 years ago now. And so the film took just a little over 4 years to complete. It's a beautiful, epic documentary that is heartbreaking in many, many ways, because you see people from, children 15 years old to elderly people, all in really bad shape. And but you also, what you see is the beautiful spirit, the heart of humanity. Because when the medical industries turned their back on these people, they found each other. And they started their own groups, their own nonprofits. They started raising money for themselves, helping find treatments for each other. And they really became their own, task force, and to help themselves and others. And so they were just everyday people. The main person that we follow in this movie is Brianne Dresden, who was just a preschool teacher. And then now she's leading a movement called React 19, which you can tell from the title that was, what they had to do to, not only did they have a reaction to COVID-19, but they needed to react. They needed to do something. And so they've done a lot. They've raised a lot of money for people that their insurance companies turned their back on them, and the world turned their back on them. And so Follow the Silenced is, our way of giving these people a voice, and they deserve it.
Yes, and I saw that all these people were denied from side of their physicians, and also completely system. They fought hard their voice to be heard. And finally, until now, when we have all this evidence and all these stories, there is a very few people who get a compensation for these injuries.
Yeah, that's right. But thankfully, there's a court case that we're involved in right now with a beautiful young lady that died due to hospital protocols, COVID hospital protocols. Her name is Grace Shara. And her father, Scott, who is now a friend of mine, has been fighting for her since her death. And she had Down syndrome, and they treated her like an animal in the hospital and denied all the wishes of the parents, who said, we don't want this kind of medication. We've heard about this. We've done our research. They strapped this young woman to the hospital bed and did whatever they wanted with her and ultimately killed her. And so that is gone to trial. It's a landmark case that's happening right now in Minnesota. And it is, so far, I will tell you that they're in court today as we speak right now. And we have, our crew is there filming. And so far, what the report we've been getting back is that that the hospitals, which are the ones being sued, and the doctors, nurses, and hospital that was involved in this, and it's a hospital, a large hospital chain, that their defense is not holding up. I'll just put it that way. That there's members of the jury that are crying, that are listening to these stories, shaking their heads, and clearly the judge is hearing things that don't make sense. And so far it appears that it's headed in the right direction. Now, if the Shahs win this case, it opens up the floodgates for thousands of other, if not millions at this point, lawsuits for a very corrupt medical system. It's either, the question is always how much incompetence or how much corruption, and it's about a mixture of both. Hospitals rarely anymore are hospital directors have anything to do with medicine. They're just CEOs, they're business people, they're bureaucrats. And the original term, the original meaning of the word doctor is teacher. And it's the one thing that doctors are not doing these days. A few still are, and God bless them. But doctors, because of the system, are not given the time they need to be with their patients, to actually teach them how to stay healthy, how to prevent diseases. Now it's all about sick care. It's just about, we'll get you sick, we'll put you on pharmaceuticals, you'll become addicted to those pharmaceuticals, dependent, and then you'll become lifelong customers. And so that whole system is really being exposed right now, and there's a lot of brave, wonderful people out there that are committed to changing and fixing that corrupt system.
I also read lots of papers, and one of them is showing also that there is a big doubt in United Kingdom that mostly of people who died during 2020, and they are supposedly die from COVID, exactly they die because of mistreatment of medicines. They use these medicines and they kill them. That means doctor protocols kill them, not really disease. That is the similar like this case.
Yeah, we're making a movie about that right now called Bad Medicine. We've been on this movie for 3 years, and the Grace Shara case is going to be the finale of the movie. And it's true, and this is a hard one for people to grasp. And I'll break it down for you because I want people to understand, to give you an overview of how this happened. But it is true that the hospitals killed the majority of the people. It's just true at this point. And I'll explain how we know that, how a lot of people know that. And I will also tell you that I've interviewed a lot of ER doctors, hospital directors, people that were right on the front line. And I've asked every single one of them one question. And it's been amazing to get the same answer back every time. I'll say to them, can you tell me how many people that you know without doubt died strictly of COVID, from COVID alone? No comorbidities, no hospital interventions that may have been wrong or done damage, just COVID. And to date, I've had a lot of them take a long, hard think into that, take a moment, a pause, and then say to me, I can't think of a single one. They all either had, other things going on, a history of bad health, or they came in because there was a gunshot victim. And so let me explain to you how the biggest crime against humanity actually took place, because a lot of people don't know. People get stuck a lot. And early on, when people were doubting me and the press was smearing me all over the world as a crazy conspiracy theorist, the one thing that would, even those who knew something was wrong, there was a lot of people who got a hold of me, high-level doctors who said, listen, something is definitely wrong. We're seeing, these protocols of staying indoors when we think everyone should be outdoors in vitamin D in the sunshine. Why are they closing the health food stores? There's things that don't make sense here. There's definitely something wrong with the situation. But here's the thing that we can't agree with you on. Are you suggesting to me that every hospital and every doctor is in on this scam? And I said, no. That's not how it works. You can't get a bunch of good people who took an oath to do no harm to suddenly be part in what is ultimately amounts to a mass genocide. That's not how it works. It works through persuasion, and so here's an overview of it. So first of all, you start with a PCR test. We've all heard of it at this point. PCR test was created by a man named Kerry Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize in biochemistry for creating the PCR test. He was very vocal in telling people for years not to ever use his invention to detect anything like a virus, because he said, I did not make it for that. And the problem, he said, is that every body contains everything in it at a microscopic level. So if you look deep enough in just about every body, you'll find cancer cells. They're dormant, they're not harmful, but they're in there. And he said, if you look deep enough in every body, you'll find SARS-CoV-2, you'll find COVID, you'll find all of it within our body. We have plastics and toxins, and everything is in our cells. And he said, and the problem with the PCR test is it'll go if you keep cycling it, and it will ultimately find COVID in everyone. So he said, you'll end up with false positives, and that's the problem. Well, lo and behold, Kerry Mullis suspiciously died just about a year before the pandemic was announced, which is concerning. And a lot of people are looking into that now, because he would have been very vocal. He was a surfer in Southern California, had a loud mouth, and he hated Anthony Fauci. He warned the world for 20 years that Anthony Fauci was a bad guy. And so had Anthony Fauci come out to say he's using the PCR test, Kerry Mullis would have shut it down. So it's very suspicious that the man died, shortly. I think it was even less than a year, maybe 7 months, something like that, if my memory serves me. And so so what would happen is, they would cycle these people. They'd come in first of all, the media hyped up that we're going to be just overloaded with, the hospitals are going to be overloaded with COVID patients. And for a short period, they were. But what that turned out to be was people panicking, because as soon as the seasonal cold or flu came on, they thought, I'm going to die, and they all rushed to the hospital where they normally would have just stayed home and rested. And so the hospitals were overflowing for a moment, but then people kind of realized that, okay, this is what's going on. I'm fine. I just have a cold, sniffles, whatever it is. And then suddenly all the COVID patients weren't showing up. Now these hospitals, in a lot of cases, had invested their annual salaries into leasing very expensive ventilator machines, furbishing entire floors of their hospitals to ICU COVID units, or maybe even some did it in parking garages. And so a big cost, because they were ready to help the masses of people. And then when the people didn't show up, now the hospitals are stuck in a very challenging position, because they're thinking, well, we just spent our annual budget. Now all these nurses, and we're going to go bankrupt, and everyone's going to be out of work here. What do we do? Well, then the CDC sends out a memo to the hospital saying, ultimately, without it being this clear, they said, here's a way to make your money back. If you just declare a patient COVID, then you get this amount of money, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. If you put them on remdesivir, you get another $17,000, whatever the actual number is. If you put them on a ventilator, you get another $36,000. And so they give them incentive. So now what was happening is these hospital directors, who are business people, are stuck in a situation of thinking, okay, either we go bankrupt, I lose my job, and everyone loses their job. Another expense they did is they flew in what they call travel nurses from all over the world, and they put them up in hotels or Airbnbs, and every day they would shuttle them in Ubers or shuttle buses. So it was a big expense. And so they're thinking, either we're going to go under, we're going to go bankrupt, or I take this offer here and I tell all the doctors, go ahead now, if somebody comes in and they were hit by a bus and they're going to die, go ahead and run a PCR test until, that's the other thing, the CDC said cycle it up to 40 cycles. It should never go over 27 cycles, because that's 40 cycles, you're going to find COVID in everybody. And so the CDC gave instructions to the doctors, no, go ahead, cycle it to 40. And so now the guy gets hit by the bus, they cycle it, and they go, oh, yes, COVID, of course. And so let's go ahead and inject him with remdesivir. Let's put him on a ventilator. Let's get as much money out of this dying person as we can so we can save our hospital. This is how they did the scam. This is one of the many, many, many ways that they got good people to do very bad things.
Whoever gets to this and organize this and standing behind, he's a genius. And genius on negative side, of course, because it's really interesting how whole world take the same steps and done the same thing. We know from the experience that usually people have direct contact with their physicians and they have tailor-made treatment. But now whole world said no, everybody has to go the same way, and now that what you explained happened everywhere. How you can explain this?
Well, yeah, so Plandemic 3 is called The Great Awakening. I highly recommend that everybody go to plandemic.com. All my movies there are for free. Just click on it and watch it. And this is how they did it. So the reason I suggest for everyone to watch Plandemic 3 is because it's about something called collectivism. And so there's many words for it, but collectivism it stems from our primal desire to be part of a tribe. So when we were tribal people, it would be dangerous for us to disagree with the tribe, because the tribe is all we have to survive. On our own, before we had modern technologies and weaponry, the wildlife would consume us, where we lived. And so, and all these other conflicting tribes would kill us on our own. So it was power in numbers. And so we had to do whatever it took to be part of this tribe. And that's in our system, that's in our DNA. And so the people behind this know that. They've been studying the human mind and the human biology for a long, long time. While we've all been just working our asses off to try to pay our rent and our cell bills and insurance, they've been studying us through data, through information, through our behavior. And so they understand how we operate better than we do, and that's a big problem. And so they understood that if they created an environment, a world, which every country experiences to some degree at this point, which is through advertising, years of being indoctrinated by advertising, telling us that we're quite not good enough, we're not good looking enough, we should be thinner, or our hair should be different. All these different ads trying to sell things have left people feeling like I'm not fully complete as a human being. So that's one way that they set an environment for the people to think like I need something else to survive. And so the other thing they do is they create an environment of meaninglessness. And so Carl Jung had said that one of the great crises of the human plight is a crisis of meaning. And that is, most people aren't pursuing what's meaningful to them, what their purpose is. They're just maintaining their life. They're doing a job, maybe 6-7 days a week, and they're not pursuing anything that they thought that as a child they knew, I'm going to do something important when I'm here and I have a purpose. And our society is structured in such a way that it pulls people away from that purpose. And so they're left just supporting, maintaining the stuff in their life that they think they own, but the stuff actually owns them. And so you put people in this kind of environment, you use political policies to keep people living on the edge, raise the cost of living, lower the wages, and then now people are barely getting by. They don't have time to really think creatively, to be creatively, and they start to get disconnected because now everyone's staring at their screens. They're not having human-to-human contact anymore, which is medicine in itself. Eye contact, presence, being with each other is as powerful as us being under the sun, and it's necessary. And so our bodies start to feel deficient because we spend a lot of time working around people maybe, but not really connecting. And what we connect with are these screens. And so now you have an environment of people who feel deeply disconnected. And then you terrorize them with this, they're all going to die. And then you use weaponized compassion because people are good. Almost everyone at the core of who they are good. And so when you tell them that if you do this, they'll actually be a good person. They'll save grandparents. They're doing the right thing. So you instill this in them. And now you terrorize them so much that their IQ actually drops because, when we go into the fight or flight part of our brain, we're not thinking as critically. It's just about survival. So now you got all the environment primed and ready to go. And then you tell them, if you just put on a mask, then, you're the good one. And everyone without a mask is the bad one. And so now it's almost like the Nazis wore the armbands to identify who they were. This becomes a symbol of this indoctrination. So now they can look at each other and go, we're a tribe. You are my people, and we are the good ones. We are the ones saving grandparents. And these other wicked people who are so selfish, those are the enemies. And that's how they divide us, and that's how they get all these good people again, to do bad things.
You are a media entrepreneur, and for sure for this kind of plan, media played a major role. And we saw that these messages were the same all around the world. And I know that they were coordinated. What is your opinion about this role of media in this pandemic?
Well, people need to realize that the media has nothing to do with news. It is a mouthpiece of these dark agendas. And I mean all the mainstream media channels, Fox included. And so be very, very careful. Every now and then they sprinkle in a little bit of valuable information, but they have to do that. It's like all of these false charities, NGOs, that they always do a little bit. You know, we saved some woman with breast cancer, but you know, it's like 3% of their funding and their work actually go to that, and the rest goes into their pockets. And so media is no different. Media has been, you know, back in the day, it was about informing the people. But they understood that information is where all of this starts. And so little by little, all the media channels were, true journalists were fired, and they were replaced by actors. And these are just simply people that are willing, for whatever reason, to go into their office, and usually the reason is because they make, you know, 20 million a year. And some people are for sale that way. And they go into an office, put on makeup, sit down at their desk, and they'll read whatever's on the teleprompter. They never stop to say, wait a minute, how do we know this is true? And I don't agree with this, and this could be harmful. They just say, whatever is on that teleprompter, I'm agreeing to read it as if it's news. And what most people don't understand is, when you've seen these montage videos of the media repeating all the same script, it's because everything's been consolidated. There's a monopoly on the industry. And so whereas before there'd be all these independent private stations reporting what they choose to report, which is the way today it's happening with, say, independent podcasters. Not too many of them are fully controlled. They get to say what they want, at least the good ones. You know, those are the ones that are going against the stream. And so, but these conglomerations, there's a central headquarters that streams to all the teleprompters pretty much the same talking points. And that's how you get all the people saying the same thing, because it's not independent anymore. You know, it's like the Great Oz is the voice, and all these people are speaking on behalf of the Great Oz, telling people whatever they need to hear to stay in compliance with the agendas. And so the upside to this, and I always try to find the positive in everything, because I ultimately believe that that's one of the greatest tools that we have, is our ability to choose what we do with the information we receive. It can tear us down or it can lift us up, even if it's negative information. So I'll show you what I mean by that. In this case, that sounds negative. We're being lied to on every media channel. But the upside to that is truth has never been more easy to find, because now all we have to do is tune into the mainstream media, listen to what they're saying on loop. Whatever they're repeating, that's the lie. And typically, the truth almost every time is in the opposite direction. So when they're telling you that is a horrible person, they're usually someone who's fighting against their corruption. When they tell you that there is no cure, there's cures, right? So whatever it is, it's easy to find. So now if we just know how to use what they're doing, their propaganda, and take it in and then transmute it, you know, like the art of alchemy, turn it into gold, then we can actually find that informed consent that we need to better guide our lives and better guide our children. And so, but it just depends on how we use the information that's coming at us. But mainstream media is the mouthpiece of these dark agendas, and they've done more damage to humanity than just about everything.
Well, it's much easier to lie to people than convince them that they've been lied to. And still, today, after 4 years, people are refusing to accept that they've been lied. And what is your opinion? How now things will change? Because they are still refusing. They say still, well, it's much easier to say it was a huge pandemic, people died from COVID, than to say, look, they were lying to us, and that's why we were part of this lie.
Well, you know, people are waking up. They really are. And so it's not heading, it's not like people have woke up and now they're going back to sleep. It feels like that sometimes, but that's not the case. That's, again, it's hard to know really what's happening at a societal level if our only window to the world is a screen. I had the ability to bring people into my studio, interview them, policymakers, medicine makers, and people who write the books on social behavior. And according to all of them, they're all seeing truly a great awakening. They're seeing people wake up. And unfortunately, they're waking up because they're having what we call direct experience now. So it's one thing to hear and to sense that something's going on. And it's another thing to have myocarditis. It's another thing to have your 25-year-old son drop dead on a football field. It's another thing to have 4 members of your family suddenly have strokes or heart attacks. And so these things are happening at record rates. It's another thing to have all the females in your life that are pretty much sterile at this point, that are having miscarriages left and right. You know, people remember enough to know, like, this is not normal. We've never experienced this before. And so they're starting to say, I think maybe these crazy people had something. Maybe they were onto something, because I'm now starting to see it in my environment, my neighbors. And it's very unfortunate. I wish people, you know, would have listened in 2020 and not done this, because it's still painful for me to see and to meet, as I travel around the United States and abroad, to have people come up to me who will say, thank you for what you've done. I listened and I didn't get the vaccine, and my husband didn't listen. And he's in the hospital now, and I think he's got about a year to live. And or mothers crying, saying, I vaccinated my child and they're not the same. And I don't know what's going on. And, you know, it just, you know, I hold my precious boys every single day, and I just think, what parents, so many parents are going through right now, so many family members are going through with loved ones, of knowing that one little decision that they made. And I've had a lot of people tell me it was just simply like I couldn't go see my mom, who was in the hospital, unless I got vaccinated. And so to see my mom before she died of COVID, we thought, I had to get vaccinated, and now I'm sick. And or I was in the military and I had to I didn't know what to do, or so many people, I had to keep my job, or I had to travel back home to see my grandparent, whatever it is. It's all these things that they use to coerce people. Like, if you want to have a normal life, you got to do what we say, you know. And now, as a result, these poor people are dealing with this, and we've not seen the worst of it. We haven't. A lot of doctors said in 2020 this could take up to 5 years before we start to see the results of what's actually in the bloodstream, and we're starting to see that now.
Yes, we are also in Croatia witnessing there is a lot of sudden deaths, and nobody, of course, is mentioning vaccine status. I'm checking whatever is famous people who died suddenly. I check, and all of them took vaccines minimum 2 to 3 times, but nobody is asking that. Nobody wants to get the vaccine status. And just 3 years ago, you couldn't go anywhere without your vaccine status. That doesn't make sense. But let me ask you, you said that lots of people are awakening. There is a lots of messages, because pandemic, it seems, is just a part of whole story. There is other thing what is happening behind, and we have to know what was the purpose of this pandemic, of vaccines and of other things that we are facing today in the world.
What is the overall intention of why they would do this? Is that the question?
That's right.
Okay. Well, if you want to go there, ultimately, it's about control. So there's always been an agenda to centralize all power. And so I used to hear this back in the day. People would talk about the New World Order and all these things. And I thought, oh, this just sounds crazy. But as it turns out, it wasn't so crazy. It is crazy, it's evil, but it's happening. There is an effort by people that we can best brand them as globalists. What does that mean? Well, a globalist wants control of the globe, and they pose as environmentalists or whatever, the Bill Gates of the world, right? These people are all globalists. They're not okay with just having a few $100 billion and living their life out and enjoying their life. And with a lot of power, maybe in their own country, they want to make sure that they control trade, food supply, all resources, and they want to be able to have their way in the world. But the problem is when you have outliers, and COVID exposed a lot of outliers, right? So there were a lot of countries that didn't play the game. And now we're able to look at them as a case study and say, wow, Sweden, wow, Africa, wow, it's interesting. You know, only 3% of your population is vaccinated, yet you guys are healthier and you didn't crash your economy. You didn't play the game. And it turns out you were, right about that. And so they don't want outliers. And so they can't have their way in your country or in my country if other countries don't play the same game, because then our countries will always look there and say, we should do it like that. I don't get it. And so they have to be able to centralize everything. So one world government, one world banking, which we pretty much already have, one world digital currency, all these things that then suddenly now all the countries have to comply, or they'll turn off their money and they'll turn off the food supply, whatever it might be. And so those are the archetype of people that are behind this. There's other darker forces that are probably lean more into satanic cults, really, that they operate, they're real, and they have a lot of power, and that happens too. But let's just stay with what I know to be accurate. And so these globalists, these are the people who meet at the World Economic Forum. Notice they're always, United Nations, which is the headquarters of the globalist agenda. The property was supplied by the Rothschilds that the United Nations original headquarters was on. It's all part of the same plan. And so you bring in all these nations together. It sounds like a unity movement, a wonderful thing. Everyone gets behind. Celebrities come out and speak about it. But what it really is we want to get rid of any leadership that isn't with us. And so they do regime changes, which is what we've done in Syria and all over the place, regime changes. And so we don't like this leader. African leaders, there's 3 or 4 African leaders who spoke out during COVID, and they all died suspiciously. Interesting. And so you get these people, and then you have crooked people, typically within Britain or United States, that will then insert who we want to lead that country. What it typically is somebody who's already part of their cabal. And now we have all countries aligned, so whatever we want to do to control the masses and all the trade and all the money and the flow of the slaves, we now have all the leaders in the powerful positions so that we can coordinate the next plan, and there's no outliers now. There's no one to do it that will have the power to do anything differently, that we can look to them as a case study. And so that's and then on top of that, there is, and I heard this years ago, and it was another one of those things that I just wrote off as a crazy conspiracy theory, but it turns out to be accurate. There are the heart of this cabal, and even the dark ones that I mentioned a moment ago, they want to decrease the population. And this is not a theory. They've written about it. It's in their manuals. It's in their books. They talk about it's etched in like the Georgia Guidestones and different areas that actually talk about what this plan is. They have actually codified it into stone. And it always talks about an ideal number of somewhere around the whole world population, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 million. And you think, well, that's billions of people gone. How's that going to happen? Well, the problem is we have the internet. We're able to communicate with each other now, to educate each other now. We have automation coming. And so now all the worker bees, all the slaves doing the grunt labor, they're not really needed anymore. All the grocery stores are self-checkout. And so as Yuval Harari, who is the science advisor of the World Economic Forum, said when they were talking about AI and automation taking over, he said, what are we going to do with all these useless people? That's the big question. And he said, well, I guess maybe more pharmaceuticals and more video games. And so said that with a kind of in a joking way, but that's how they actually think. But it's beyond that now is like, okay, well, now you got them entertained, which some people, there's an old theory people can look up called bread and circus. It's like, just give the people a little bit of bread and a little bit of entertainment and they'll be fine. That's what he's saying. Give them bread and circus. But what happens when those people now are, in their terms, leeching off of the system? We are now just consuming the food, the water, polluting the air. We're not useful anymore. What do we do with these people? There are collectives of very dark people who do not care about humanity such that they want us to stop procreating. And this is why a lot of these medicines, what Bill Gates has done all over the world, has always resulted in sterilization and paralyzation. Why is that? Well, people are paralyzed. They're unable to do anything, to fight back. And they're sterilized. They're unable to procreate. And so this agenda has been going on for decades, for a couple of generations now, and we're now just seeing it reach that eruption part, and it's wonderful to see. Plandemic 2, we had a whole section about eugenics. If you don't know what eugenics is, look it up. We had a whole section about eugenics, but I said, I don't think people are ready to hear this, and we cut it out. And I said, because I know the media is going to obsess on that, and it's going to seem like one of those really far-fetched conspiracy theories. And here we are now, 4 years later, and everyone's talking about eugenics. They're understanding that Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was involved in eugenics, and all these people, Bill Gates' father. Eugenics is basically like, we are the elite. We come from elite bloodlines. We need to, in the same way that dog breeders look for the perfect dogs to match, so they have these pedigreed dogs. These people believe in that. They believe all these other people are low class, low IQ. We need to have this pristine bloodline, and everyone else should be weeded out of society and eliminated, because we are the right ones. And that's at the heart of these agendas.
We are facing in Europe now decreasement of population. There is a negative birth rate. And when I heard lots of these depopulation theories, and I just asked them, do you know how many people is less every year in Europe? They don't know. But when they see, then I ask them, what is this? Population rising or depopulation? And then everything stay there. Nobody wants to talk about this. But also, when I spoke to others, and when I asked who are these people who are standing behind the curtain, and I heard one very interesting answer. If you know their names, then these are not this one. They are the only actors. The real one who is standing behind are somebody who is very powerful and who is organizing all this. All other people that we see in television mostly are actors. What do you think about this?
That's both true and not true. And so, of course, there are people that will never know their names. When people say Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, not even close. There are trillionaires that are on this planet right now, and we'll never know their names. And they have all the gold and the trillions of dollars in power. So that part of it's true. There are people that will never know their names. But that's also a cover story, because when that's taking the attention off of the people that are actually at the top of the pyramid. It's like, no, it's not really them. They're working for somebody else. In some cases, it is them, and they have been exposed, and their ego is too powerful for them to remain too silent. They started to feel very comfortable, and that they were safe enough to come out of the shadows, and they did that. And these are the George Soroses of the world, and there's been a lot of them that have Kissinger. Go down the list of the people that, are they working for someone else? Well, again, yes and no. Some are, and then some are just part of the collective. And so it's the group think. It's the cabal mentality that they're really in service to. And so, yeah, again, the answer is that is true in some cases, but sometimes I'm careful with suggesting that the people that we're looking at aren't the real ones, because that's exactly what they want us to think, that they're all slaves of the system too. And no, some of them are the slave masters.
Well, things now changing in the United States. We have a new Secretary of HHS, Mr. Kennedy, who was also talking the similar things during pandemic. Do you expect that things will change or started to change in the United States? Because if there something happened, for sure in other countries, things will start to change on the same direction.
Yeah, a lot is changing right now in the United States. And, I wrote a post that went viral. I think Friday, maybe I sent it out, or maybe it was Monday that I sent it out. Monday. And it was really helping people understand, I've spent the last 10 years behind the curtain of politics. All of my filmmaking has been, I travel with RFK, I've traveled with Tulsi Gabbard, traveled with Bernie Sanders, I've had meetings with Trump and Kash Patel and Elon Musk, and so I know a lot of these people. And it's, as I tell everyone that gets mad at Bobby Kennedy because they see he just endorsed the mRNA vaccine. And I released this post because I said, listen, there's a game. We all know politics is a game, but I didn't know how deep that game went until I spent 10 years, as a fly on the wall and at very important meetings sometimes, getting to hear how they talk, what they talk about, how they strategize. And what is happening is, the post I put out suggested this. I said, listen, I'm not giving you inside information. I really don't know myself, but here's my hunch. When Bobby comes out to say that he is supporting the new mRNA vaccine, but he'll only support it if it goes through the rigorous trial that all medicine is supposed to go through. What he's actually doing is attempting to get a major manufacturer to go through the rigorous testing and trials that they normally would, but they don't because since 1986 they've had no liability, so there's no incentive for them to test their vaccines, because if they fail, they lose millions of dollars. They'd rather test them on the people, and that's what they do. And if they put them in people, and a lot of people get hurt or die, then they change the name of the medication, or there suddenly becomes a veterinarian medication. It never goes off the market. They just repurpose it. That's one of the games they play, one of the mini games. And so I suggested to people, I said, there are a couple of factors to look at here before you just lose trust in Bobby Kennedy, because I know him well, and he's a good man of solid integrity, a humble man. Understand that he and Trump and everyone have learned that this thing is so much more. The swamp goes deep. We'll just put it that way, very, very deep. And there's been a lot of things set up to protect the evil ones. And our court circuitry is so corrupt that there's certain courts that if Trump prosecutes one of the evil politicians, it will reach a certain court, and that those people have all been bought and paid for, the DA, the judge, everybody, by George Soros, and they're under agreement that they will grant that person immunity, and they'll never be held liable again. And so when you find this out, you go, okay, we can't prosecute them right now because they'll be granted immunity. We must clean up the court system first. People don't know this. And I told people, I said, what Bobby's doing, he's forcing them to go into a trial, because we all know that the vaccine's going to fail that trial if they end up doing it, if it's transparent and if it's fair, if they can oversee that it's an actual authentic trial. And then he can use that data to prove the point that he's been making for decades, which these are not safe and effective medicines. They need to be more rigorously and professionally and scientifically manufactured and tested. And so I said, me knowing him, I bet you anything that this is what he's actually doing. He's trying to get one of the major manufacturers to actually do a legitimate trial so he can use that data to then stop all the rest of the vaccines. To say, listen, now that we know that this one was told to be safe and effective and it's not, then let's look at Pfizer. Now let's look at these other ones. So there's a strategy that has to happen here. And there's also another layer on that there's so trillions of dollars invested in this by some very, very dark forces. Big Pharma is a dark, dark cabal. And if Bobby moved at the speed that he wants to move, he would very likely suffer the same fate that his uncle and father suffered. And so there's also that thing for us to recognize, that when they step into there and they get briefed and they start to understand, listen, this is the game you stepped into, and these are the risks you're taking, and you must move strategically, and it's not going to happen as fast as you want it to happen. It can't. You've got to do it right, because if he just came out and shut the vaccines down, unfortunately, half of the world, as you alluded to, would rally against him, because they would think that he's now making everyone unsafe, and then they would end up, releasing another bioweapon into the world just to prove that it's Bobby Kennedy's fault because he shut down the vaccines. That's what they would do, and they know that. They just tried that with measles here in Texas, and we sprinted out and did a investigation of the situation, because the media was saying 2 children have already died, and thanks to Bobby Kennedy because he doesn't believe in the measles vaccine, blah, blah, blah. They were trying to do that already. We did the investigation, released a film called A Little World, which is online, interviewed the Mennonite community and interviewed the doctors. The little girls didn't die of measles, of course. Both of them died because the hospitals gave them the wrong antibiotic and it killed them. And so that's a big part of what we do, is we try to get ahead of these narratives. When we see that, here they're building a case here, let's get ahead of it. Let's put the truth out. And I'd like to think that some of our movies have caused them to stop what they're doing and change direction. And if we keep doing that, then they're going to reach a point where they're going to have to play another game plan, or by that time we'll be able to fully expose them and stop them.
Yes, who wants to see this cases of measles from Texas. I had a short interview with Dr. Pierre Corey, who explained in detail what really happened. And yes, both of them didn't die from measles. I have to ask you at last.
Pierre was in the film that we did.
Great. Yeah. Well, I have to ask you for the last. Well, as you said in your movies trilogy, Plandemic. That means everything is planned. What do you think? What do you anticipate? What will be the next scenario that we will face in this game of control and depopulation in the world?
Well, there's already talks of a new virus, quote unquote, which is bioweapon. When you hear the word virus, first of all, consider that the original meaning of the word virus is poison. So what they're talking about is poison. There's a poison heading your way. But here's another one come out of China, just on time. And so, you know, what is it? How deadly is this bioweapon? We don't know yet. But there's that, and then there's civil unrest that's already happening here in America. So Los Angeles is on fire. They even here in Austin, Texas, they started riots on Monday. And we all knew this was coming. This is part of, they're paid. So the instigators are paid. There's a big group of people that get up to $1,200 a day, $1,200, something like that, $1,200 a day, I think it is. And then the collective, the followers, then follow them, and they're not getting paid. They're there because they think they're doing the right thing. They're there because they're angry. They're there. They have a lot of good points, typically, but unfortunately, the way that they express those points is destructive. And what they don't know is what the communist leaders coined. I think it was Lenin who coined the phrase "useful idiots," and I was a useful idiot. I was a far left progressive following Bernie Sanders, and that's what woke me up politically in 2015 when I was on the road with Bernie Sanders. And so I was one of them, so I get it. I felt that I was doing the right thing. I felt that I was following the right people. And now I understand that it's this weaponized compassion that pulls us into that. And that's what's happening with a lot of these good people that are in the streets. They actually think they're just fighting for, and I get it. I love Mexican people. Half of my family's Mexican and from other Latin nations, and I love them. And I think most of us do. We also understand the harm that's being done to our countries when 10 million of them are allowed to come in here, and they're all seem to be fighting age young men who are now the ones that are in the streets waving the flags of their countries, saying death to America. So this was all part of the destruction to cripple America, to keep us all in a place of dependency. It's all part of that overall agenda, and they're waiting for it. And I'll tell you right now, live on the air is be prepared for the next George Floyd. So that's how they ramp it up, and mark my words. And so in one of these events, some unarmed black person or brown person, maybe a woman this time, is going to get killed. And then they're going to say, there you go, there's the fascism, there's the evil people, and they're all going to rally around this person, make that person a saint, even if they're not, like George Floyd, even if they died of fentanyl or something else. And they're going to tell everyone that it's this fascist regime that is killing innocent people in the streets. And then they're going to ramp up their pay of agitators around the United States, and that'll carry on. France has been going through it, and a lot of other nations have been going through it. They want total chaos around the world. But again, the upside to this is this. In the end, we win. I have no doubt about that. And it's not just because I'm optimistic. It's because for over 30 years, I've studied the work of Joseph Campbell, a man named Joseph Campbell, who dedicated his life to understanding the human plight, the human story. He studied all the stories that mankind have been telling ourselves since the cradle of civilization, since the dawning of man. And he studied the etchings on the cave walls and the stories told around the campfires, and he found a commonality in all these stories. And the commonality, it became so important that he picked out that Hollywood actually took his work, and most iconic films that you've ever seen are based upon Joseph Campbell's work that is known as the hero's journey. Because once we understood the mythologies of our lives and how they're all so similar, and how is it that these primitive people at the beginning of humanity were telling us very similar stories. There was the saber-toothed tiger was the dragon of that time, and it was the unsuspecting hero who saved the tribe, and then that story just the faces and names change, but it's the same story told over and over. And it's always about a reluctant hero that stumbles upon a life crisis, something really big, and then takes it upon themselves or is charged with the responsibility to go out into the world and to find the hero to save the day. And along the way, what happens is that hero's journey becomes a training experience for this person to ultimately realize that they are the one, that the force is within. We've heard all the cliches from the Hollywood movies because this is the hero's journey. And I believe the stage that we're in right now is the stage when all of us are waking up to realize the force is within, that we are the one. It's not some superhero coming to save us, some other hero, but it's we, the people. It's the cells within this organism of life, this gift that we call life, we are now charged with the responsibilities of rising up and protecting our children, protecting our wives, of supporting our husbands, and bringing all the light workers together, because darkness is trying to take over. And so we call them light workers. In a moment of darkness, it's our duty to shine our brightest. And when we do that, our light is so powerful, it is so unbreakable, that it will wash away the darkness. And we are going to get to experience that within this generation. There's a lot of dark stuff that's going to happen between now and then, but that is written in stone. That's how it works. And so I am absolutely positive that that's how it ends. But what we experience between now and then is up to us.
Thank you, Mikki, for your time. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, sir.
And I hope that my audience will go to your channel, go through all what you taped already and explain everything in detail. And after that, they can make a decision. What is this, what we've been discussing about?
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support.
Evo, dragi narode, imali ste prilike čuti nešto što vjerovatno za svakoga od vas je možda više ili manje šokantno. Zato bez puno objašnjenja predlažem vam pogledajte filmove Pandemic 1, 2 i 3. Pogledajte zadnji koji smo danas prezentirali, Follow the Silenced, dakle oni koji su bili utišani kad su svjedočili svoje priče, i donesite sami zaključke. Koliko je od ovoga što gospodin Willis je danas rekao je istina ili moguće, a koliko je samo science fiction, ako jest, ili teorija zavjere. Na vama je da sudite. Na meni je bilo da ovu temu otvorim, da vam pružim mogućnost onima koji do sada nisu imali prilike vidi što gospodin Willis radi, mogućnost da vidite, da pogledate te dokumentarce i da se upoznate sa svim ovim o čemu smo pričali. Donesite sami zaključak i nakon toga donesite odluku kako ćete se odnositi prema tome. Ja se nadam da ste bili zadovoljni sa današnjom emisijom i uskoro se vidimo u sljedećoj epizodi Slobodni.
Nitko vas neće natjerati da se poklonite zvijeri, učinit ćete to svojevoljno, odbacujući vjeru. Bićete laka meta za zvijer, jer se niste podredili vjeri. Ako se ne podredite vjeri, podredit ćete se zvijeri. Toliko ćete se suobličiti sa ovim svijetom da nećete ni prepoznati da ste u zabludi. Biće to najveća demonska prevara ikada i pravedno zaslužena osuda nad nepokajanim grešnicima.
Gdje su svi oni koji su nas liječili, zakletvom iz mrtvih dizali, svojom šutnjom ste nas izdali? Gdje su svi oni koji su nas liječili, zakletvom iz mrtvih dizali? Zar su nas i oni izdali? Gdje su svi oni koji su nas liječili, zakletvom iz mrtvih dizali, svojom šutnjom ste nas izdali?